So, what about Romantic poetry itself? Well, as I mentioned in the first video, we have a pre Romantic poet, um, William Blake, and then we have two generations of Romantic poets in England. But let's first of all look at what the main features are for the Romantic poetry. So, what made Romanticism a revolutionary phenomenon? And here are the characteristics that I would like you to understand. So, first of all, we have a reevaluation of the role of subjectivity, of the self. So, the Romantics turn their attention to what's inside of you. And this becomes a source of inspiration and creativity for poetry. Second, and most important thing, a new idea of nature. As a reaction to the Industrial Revolution, we have the idealization of nature as a getaway, as a way of escaping from the brutal reality of society. Third, a new concept of beauty. Beauty is no longer a synonym of symmetry and harmony as it was in the Enlightenment or the neoclassicism of the beginning of the 18th century. Beauty is now in the exotic, in the irregular, the wild, the supernatural, and the strange. Imagination. Romantic artists, they unfolded different layers of reality through imagination. So a reality is not only what we perceive, but it's much more than what we can experience with our senses. And finally, the artist. The artist uses their imagination, inspiration, and sensitivity to get to the meaning of things and recreate the external world. And here you can see the two different generations of Romantic poets. The first generation belongs with Coleridge and Wordsworth, two very important poets, as we will see in a second. And the second generation, the one of Byron, Keats, and Shelley. The first generation, they mainly lived in Britain. The aim of poetry for them is to teach something to the people. It was to teach them what? The new revolutionary way of making poetry. Whereas for the second generation, those characters were already established for them. So they wanted to elevate poetry much more. And they have an inspirational aim. As you can also see, they left England and they lived in Mediterranean countries. So they didn't want to stick to the country of origins, but they wanted to see the world, to see and to experience other forms of living. The themes for the first generation are simplicity and humble life. The characters are very simple and humble. Whereas in the second generation, we have political idealism, classical ideals, and beauty. And you would think, well, we just said that Romanticism is something that goes against classical ideals. Yes, it's true. But in this sense, and I'm thinking of Keats, for example, they use classical beauty and the ideals of beauty in order to express their imagination, express their inner selves. Okay, so it's not always a mere description of reality, but it's something that powers imagination. The setting, obviously English rural world for the first generation and a varied setting for the others. They travel a lot. Language, very different here. Simple and spontaneous for the first generation. The poems are very simple. Whereas in the second generation, the language is sometimes too complex to understand. there are also common elements between the two generations, as the importance of imagination, nature, the supernatural, and feelings, which are the main themes, obviously, of Romantic poetry. One important text that paves the road, basically, for Romantic poetry is the lyrical ballads. This is a collection of poems, mostly by Wordsworth, but written together with Coleridge. So the two poets for the first generation, they were very good, close friends. They knew each other and they worked together. And they published the lyrical ballads in 1798. And here you can see already from the title, lyrical ballads, an oxymoron. Lyrical is something that's high and poetic, but a ballad is something that belongs to the common people. And this is exactly what this collection of poems was. They were ballads written with an easy language, the language of the people, because poetry was not about technique, it was about emotions and imagination. In 1800, they publish a second edition, which includes a preface, which becomes the lyrical manifesto of the English Romanticism. And obviously, we will not read the whole preface, but I have summed up the themes for you. So, what Wordsworth and Coleridge say about poetry, remember, it has a didactic aim at this point, that poetry should be written in the natural language of common speech. We have to focus on simple country people and natural scenes. Okay, so make everything simple. And this is what people remember a lot from the preface, this sentence. Emotions recollected in tranquility. This is what Wordsworth says. Poetry should flow from emotions recollected in tranquility. So there are emotions, but the poet analyzes these emotions. They work on the emotion and they let the emotions flow through poetry, focusing on feelings rather than on technique. Okay. The poem is subject to emotions and it's not subject to the structure. It's not subject to the rhyme. It's not subject to pentameters or tetrameters. And the poet is inseparable from nature. All the poems from the first generation, they have a natural setting. And just as a reference for you here, I chose a small poem by Wordsworth, which is titled "My Heart Leaps Up," just to show you, even visually, the difference between Romantic poetry and what we saw, for example, with Shakespeare's sonnets. Look at this poem. It's very short, and there's already you can see there's a lot of repetition. So. Yes, there's going to be some alliterations, but it's a very, very simple poem. My heart leaps up when I behold a rainbow in the sky. Basically, the poem is saying, I am so happy when I see the rainbow. Okay, my heart leaps up, my heart keeps a beat. So was it when my life began. It was like this even when I was a child. So it's now I am a man. Uh, Still the same feeling. So be it when I shall grow old. And it's going to be like that even when I'm old. So I'm going to be amazed by the rainbow. Or let me die, he says. I'd rather not live anymore if I feel no joy in seeing a rainbow. The child is father of the man. Childhood teaches people the simple lessons they carry for the rest of their lives. Okay, the emotions you feel when you're a child are those that forge you once you grow old. And I could wish my days to be bound each to each by natural piety. And I want to feel this sense of wonder every day of my life, basically. I want my days to be connected to each other by the amazement of nature. Okay, natural piety. This word, believing in nature, la fede nella natura. So it's a very, very simple poem, as you can see here. It's the delight that the speaker feels when he sees the rainbow. Is there anything more childish than this?